So now we have Joseph Duke. He is of iPass. He is an accomplished entrepreneur, skilled programmer, visionary thinker, and avid strategy board gamer. I might have to challenge him to like World of Warcraft or something like that. As a founder and CEO of iPass.com, Duke has made significant contributions to the field of integration technology. He's going to be sharing the stage today with Judah Frest, is a seasoned solutions consultant with extensive experience in the e-commerce and CMS space. He has developed a robust portfolio that includes work with both small businesses and enterprise-level clients. Today, they're discussing with us, this is a bit of a mouthful, so give me a second, establishing effective integration standards, navigating and mitigating risks in your technology ecosystem. Please give it up for Joseph and Judah.
Integrations are the Wild West of software, often chaotic and unregulated, with few standards to guide how they are built, managed, and adapt to your evolving ecosystem. It's easy to lose trust in your technology investments, and that can lead to costly and unnecessary digital transformations. My name is Joseph Duke. I've been working with integrations for 30 years and consulting organizations from mom and pop, Fortune 500, as well as founding a modern integration platform.
Hi everybody, I'm Judah Frest. I've been in the digital space for the last 12 years or so as a project manager, both on the e-com side and on the CMS side. And I've seen the hard way that integrations have gone and learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. So today we're going to walk you through a sustainable framework to avoid unnecessary expenses for your organization. There are so many technologies, literally thousands of them, from your e-com to your PIM to your CRM. The list goes on and on. And we've worked with companies that have taken orders that have come out of Magento and gone to hundreds of systems, and I'm sure that there are people here who've seen that go to just as many, if not more. The integration market is big. It's doubled in the last 3 years and set to triple in the next 10. The ecosystem uncertainty isn't going away, and if we don't do something about it, it's going to get away from us.
So where does all this uncertainty come from? It's from a lack of information. So our business teams are trying to make decisions about the company, and the information that they need is missing or unavailable, so they're making misinformed decisions. It can come from breakdowns in the integration system, and the information is incorrect inside of a system, so they're making decisions based on misinformation. And that leads to an uncertainty in future decisions. A lot of it comes from the complexity of the integration ecosystem itself, that our teams don't really understand the nuances of the connectivity, data flows, the transformation. When one system is dependent upon data that originated in a completely another system that it doesn't have a direct connection to. And so when the organization needs to make a change, they don't know how to adapt to that change without having to go through a huge discovery process or bring in third party to evaluate it. And then finally, one of the biggest reasons for uncertainty is that we have no real clear definition due to a lack of standards and unregulated space that we don't know who owns what part of the process, both in the design, development, and then also when things go wrong. And so that leads to a lack of control over their own destiny. So our teams start to feel very uncertain about things that are originating from the integration space. And so this is easier to visualize if we separate integration considerations into two categories. The first category are technical considerations, and the second are organizational considerations. The tech considerations are things that you're probably familiar with, like data formats, file formats, infrastructure, data flows, transformations, and authentication. things you're dealing with on probably any integration project you've worked on. The organizational, and so technical considerations are really important, but we're going to spend most of this talk talking about organizational considerations because this is where most of the loss and stalled behavior comes from as we're trying to meet our growth objectives. So how we define organizational considerations are those things that disrupt our operations as it's related to the technologies that we've licensed, and then how that then leads to business growth objectives. And so as we're trying to implement a sustainable integration ecosystem, we have to think about it differently than those tech considerations. We have to think about what are the things that we're going to do to increase the trust of our teams with the technologies that we've licensed, and contrast that to the things that lower their trust in those technologies, with the hope that that will stabilize our organization on those technologies for longer periods of time, and we have fewer digital transformation exercises. Some of you probably experience system changeouts every year in some capacity. So on this diagram on the right, we have some common data flows. You'll see products maybe moving from an ERP like NetSuite to PIMCore. You have data moving from PIMCore to Magento, possibly transaction moving to a point of sale for buy online, pick up in store, or ship from store. These are just some examples, so if you would just visualize in your own environment what technologies those are and think about a few of those connections. And this is a very common way to think about integrations, is we have a data map of where things are moving. What is not shown up here are the intricacies of the human relationships as it's related to all this data movement. So if you think about each one of these bubbles might represent a different licensed technology. We have a relationship most of the time with a third party who has licensed that technology to us. There's more commonly a service provider that's a domain expertise in that particular technology. And oftentimes, because they know just that one system, we'll have many of those as you go around the circle. Then outside of that, you may have industry consultants or third-party SIs that will come in and do gap work for customizations. And all of that's happening outside the business. Inside the business, we'll have oftentimes a manager who played a role in choosing the licensed application that we've incorporated for retail or for e-commerce. Most of the time, we'll see that there's a separate manager over each of those different divisions or business units. It can get really complex. Like, we've even seen separate business units inside an organization that operate as joint ventures and have separate shareholders. So it can get very dirty. And I think the key point here is to make that these relationships have different incentives and different motivators for each of those parties involved. And sometimes they'll run into conflict with one another. Without having good boundaries in place to understand how we're going to deal with those, it can leave us vulnerable to integration problems.
So it leads to lots of questions. How do new staff, both internally and externally, get trained? What happens when two service providers that you need, that each have their own domain expertise, don't play nice in the sandbox? Who owns those integrations? When something goes wrong, is it the e-com manager paying for it? Is the CIO, the CTO? Who ends up paying for that in the grand scheme of things? And when there is a question about that payment, then there's a question about eroding profitability. Whose P&L does it come out of? So all of these questions lead us to stop and think about how do we deal with this as a larger problem, because they're powerless to control it. And with businesses changing rapidly, new technologies coming in. I mean, 2 years ago, who would have thought that we all would need an AI strategy? You know, we need that now. We need to figure out how that's going to play in here, but that's not going to be the only new technology that's going to come into play. So these organizational problems are only going to continue to grow.
So the biggest contributor to uncertainty in our organization is the lack of regulation in the integration space, so data that's between APIs. And because because of that, coupled with the arrangement that we share with our service providers or system integrators, primarily the system integrator business model, it leads us down a certain path. And I think what I want to share about, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the system integrator business model, because it's important to understand that the dynamic of it can work at odds, primarily in the way that we set expectations on our partners and what role they're going to play in all of this. And so what I'm speaking to in the next little bit is not about a specific company or about the attributes of any people. I think intentions are always good. It's about the business model itself. If you think about water flows according to the lay of the land, if you dig a trench, the water is not going to will itself down it, it's just going to go that path. And the system integrator business model, combined with this unregulated space, is going to lead us down a certain path. And we just want to be aware of what those things are so that we can have healthy boundaries and have shared alignment with our partners. Okay, so some of the things that we're going to rely on our partners, system integrators, to help us with are performing discovery. So they're going to fill gaps where our team lacks the talent in discovery, in consulting. They're going to play diagnostics. They're going to resolve issues that are found. They're going to train our teams on new things that have been implemented. They're also going to have to train their new team members as they come on to learn about our business and learn about their own implementations thus far inside of our environment. They may play a role in co-diagnosing issues that didn't even happen on the system that they're responsible for. So another third-party system has a problem, and they're brought in to help figure out where the origin of an issue is so that you can get to the root of the problem. But these are all important roles that they're going to bring to the table, their talent and help and want to help with. But if there's a danger in it, and that's what I'm going to allude to here, it's that a lot of this work is reactive and it's not predictable. There's not an accountability to that work to your business outcomes. And as great as their intentions are, like they want for you to have a good business outcome, but they're not truly accountable to it. Your finances and your financial goals and business growth goals are your goals, and they're not bound to those. But because we're relying on them so much in the integration space due to all of this lack of regulation, they're stretched to provide that talent. And so they often play more of an advisory role than we're even comfortable with as merchants. And so we rely on them to help advise us, and then they are also the solution. And psychologically, what that does to us is it makes us start to think about them as having a connection or a tie to our business outcomes. We elevate them to a position of seniority beyond the relationship that we actually agreed to. And so that trust engagement that we extend to them creates a perceived dependence, and the cycle grows because we're not growing ourselves from an ownership standpoint. We're outsourcing the ownership of our integration space to our partners, and that's not even necessarily their specialty. They're just trying to figure it out with us. So the downside of that engagement is that it can start to feel very heavy. You know, relationships sour over a mis-expectation setting with our partners. And the reason that is that when there is a consequence due to a breakdown, the merchant is always on the losing side of that. They suffer the business consequence. The service provider comes in to help, or the system integrator comes in to help, and they're making talent available for you. They're doing what they're supposed to do. But it can start to feel like they're not carrying the same weight we are, which is why I'm trying to bring this out, to recognize these things, because we're going to talk about the flip side, and that's going to help us take greater ownership over our space. Finally, there's one other consideration in there that we want to talk about, and that's kind of this hidden leverage point that where the integration is not portable. It can't move from one service provider to another, so we may feel stuck even when the relationship's sour. And even if they own it, we can't take it, but even if we own it, The next service provider we go to speak to is going to say, I don't want to inherit what they built. I want to rebuild this on our own. And that's one of the gateways or gateway paths to a digital transformation exercise. While we're at that integration, why don't we reevaluate the technology? And it takes us on that road. So the truth is that your business is very unpredictable to the SIs from an SI business model perspective. They simply cannot be accountable to your business outcomes, otherwise they wouldn't survive. It's the function of the system integrator model is effectively their talent is their product. And I'm summarizing, so for all the system integrators in here, I don't mean to offend, but in summary, you have talent, and that talent is parsed up and sold in intervals of an hour or whatever fraction it may be, and that's broken up so it can be sold, and then upon delivery, the person who's providing that talent moves on to the next project. And whether it's trouble tickets they're working on or diagnostics or a new project, that's what they're off to. They're not, they want your business to succeed, but they're not sitting around saying, how do I make this organization more sustainable? How do I spend more time thinking about the health of this business? They're delivering the outcome that you've asked them to do, and then they move on. So it's not their job, and I think it's really healthy for us as merchants to accept that if we are not internally inside of our organization thinking about how we're going to create a sustainable approach to an integration ecosystem, nobody is going to do that for you, and some of these problems are going to continue to occur. So without meaning to, the whole system is working to diminish our own team's trust in themselves to make decisions. It's getting too complex and we're outsourcing our dependencies. And it's working to break down the trust in our licensed technologies because it may not be working. And then it's breaking down the relationship with our third-party relationships because of this expectation. And we're not meaning for it to go that path, but it does. And eventually you're sitting around a board table and you're all commiserating about how we have this ineffective, broken process, and someone says it's time to make a change. And that change that they want to do is ultimately because any change would feel better than what they have right now. And that's probably true, but it's not a good reason to make change. A good reason is trying to get to our business growth goals and align our people with the licensed technology. But we don't know how to do that necessarily. So we just want to get away from the thing we're in, and that's not a good reason to go through this change. But should the change happen, it might start with a relationship soured with my SI, and I want to move to another organization. And that doesn't help because it wasn't the relationship with the SI. You might like the new guys better, personality-wise, but the problem is the SI business model tied to the unregulated integration space. And so if we don't address those needs with our SI partner, then we can't get ourselves on a healthy footing. If we change the tech out, what we're doing is we implement the new one and it gives us a false sense of hope. We ask all the right questions, like what data points do we need to go from this system to another? How do we transform it? What file formats are we going to use? And we move that data. We get the data moving, and it seems like everything's fine, but the problems were not technical consideration problems. The problems were organizational issues. And so we have to identify those organizational issues and address them, or we're going to have the same problem again. So they start to creep back in over time with that new technology. Missed a few. Okay, so what we want to do is bring a more sustainable approach to the tech ecosystem. We want to improve the trust that our teams have in the technologies that we're licensing, and to do that, we want to have better information. And so I'm going to talk about some things that are going to set the expectation a little higher for us as we start evaluating integrations into the future. Things don't have to be the way that they have been traditionally done. So we want information, and we want to know that the information is accurate in all the systems we're licensing. We don't want to guess. We don't want to assume that it made it. Hope for the best and make decisions on bad information. So we want that. We want information to be accurate across all our systems. We want to manage healthy budgets. We don't want spiky, unexpected expenses related to repairs in the integration space. We want to share accountability with our partners. We want to have these healthy boundaries set up where we know who's going to be responsible for what, and that's going to lead into the next two, which is if we have them, it'll make that relationship much stronger and more healthy as we grow together. What we want is visibility into the data between APIs. And visibility between APIs is really important for 2 reasons. One, and the first important one, is that we're getting success feedback constantly. So it's easy just to assume that things are all right and we don't know, but if we have information telling us that our data is moving correctly, then we're building trust in our team to know that the systems are working as expected. If we have visibility and we identify an error, we want to be notified about that before it becomes a customer service or experience issue or some kind of employee impact. So we want to know about it, and then we can figure out what to do about it. Now, that leads us into, if we have a problem, we want transparency into the origin of the problem. I want to know which system was the cause so that we don't have to get 4 people onto a phone and waste days trying to diagnose and figure out where the root of this problem came from. Once we know where the problem is and what the problem is, it's easy to solve. The hardest part is the organizational challenges of getting to it. So if we have the expectation and we build the right model in place, we can see where the origin was instantly. And all that's leading to a philosophic change internally. Instead of thinking about integrations as an add-on to a technology we're licensing, we think about it as it's the lifeblood of the ecosystem, and it deserves to be protected so that the rest of the organization can focus on those growth goals and not constantly be pulled off track to deal with reactive breakdowns. And then finally, the last thing that I think is absolutely critical is when you take on any integration initiatives, that you are constructing it in such a way that it survives any relationship in the organization. So that's not only a third party, but also our own staff. We want to make sure that that investment stays working and that the company can continue on its growth goals without a dependency of a specific person. So we're going to leave you with a downloadable matrix that you can think about at a later time. What these are on the left side are a list of considerations that for a sustainable approach to an integration ecosystem. The answers on the left side are solutions that represent a weaker response or a weaker implementation to each of these categories, and the ones on the right side are a stronger approach. So as an example, portability down here at the bottom I was speaking to a minute ago. A particularly weak response to this would be my integrations are black box, or the logic is exclusive to a specific system integrator, making migrations complex and costly. And a strong response would be I have control over my integrations. They can be easily understood and maintained by more than one service provider, ensuring vendor flexibility. So if you think about these things, the goal here isn't to tell you what to do. It's to say, here are considerations that should be involved in each implementation of any technology and integration effort, and to know that it's possible to have these that are over here. This is possible today, but it doesn't seem that way because it's not the norm. It's not the norm.
Yeah, so we want to leave you with a framework and with questions. So, we talked about adaptability, but in terms of portability, are you in control? Do you own the integration? Is it reliable? Is the platform standardized? Can somebody else take over? Is it secure? Would it pass muster if you got audited? Thinking about these questions should help lead you to a decision that's going to help your organization in the long run. So feel free to scan that to get this, for yourselves. And with that, we're wrapped. I don't know if we have time for questions or not. Okay. Any questions?
Well, I was going to say that you guys did a great comprehensive breakdown about best practices for integrations, and as an SI agency, I'll speak for us all that no harm, no foul. Very much appreciated, and I love the fact that you guys are offering something to take home with. So clap it up. Thanks so much for these guys. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, man.